Hello and welcome to Deepak's Poker Channel. This video will show you some highlights from my run in the November 13, $2,000 PKO on America's Cardroom. Hope you enjoy. See you on the other side. Okay, this is the first hand of the tournament. I've got King 7 suited in the small blind with the min raised. I call, the big blind 3 bets to 10,000. I decide to call, let's see what's going to happen. Flop a king, I check, he bets big. I shove, and he gets out of the way. Not unexpected. Was hoping he had maybe pocket queens or jacks or something and would get curious. So the next hand, a few hands later, get moved to a new table. I've got ace 3 suited. Under the gun, I do a min raise, get 3 bet, and a call. I decide to come along. The flop is a pair of queens with 2 clubs, so it checks around. When a king comes on the river, I decide to do a half pot bet. I get a caller. And then when a 3 comes, I think, well, maybe I've got some showdown equity here. So I check, he checks, and my 3 ends up taking it down. So thank goodness for the 3 on the river. So now my stack is up almost 50% over in starting stack. Another orbit later, I've won a small pot. Get pocket 5s into the gun, raised to 2,400. Get 1 caller from late position. Flop is 2-7-2. I'm thinking that might be pretty good for my 5s. 3 of clubs on the turn. He bets again. I'm still thinking my 5s might be good. Then when the jack of hearts comes on the river, I check. He bets, and I just got a feeling he's taking a stab at it. So I call, and my 5s are good. So this was a theme early. I was winning a lot of decent-sized pots. I get ace king on the button. Raise from the under the gun player, so it gets to me. I do a 3 bet. Big blind gets out of the way. Under the gun calls. Flop comes ace queen 4. When he checks, I check to see what he'll do on the turn. Another queen comes. He checks again. I decide it's time to find out what he's got. I do a half pot bet. He calls. Checks again on the river, and I do another half pot bet, and he gets out of the way. So finally comes time to get my first bounty. I'm in the small blind with 10 jack, folds to me. I do a call. Big blind 3 bets. I come along. Flop is ace king 4. I check. I've got a gutter. He bets 5,000. Not a big bet. So I call, and then I get the gen card on the turn, the queen. I check again. He bets again. I shove. He calls, and he turns over ace jack. So I avoid the 10 on the river and get my first bounty. And this next hand featured me making a tough decision on the river. I've got king jack suited. Player before me raises 2.5 times the big blind. I call. Big blind comes along. Checks around on the dry 7-4-10 flop. A jack comes on the turn, but it's a third heart out there. Big blind checks, or player to my right bets. I call. He does a pretty big bet on the river, but I'm thinking he just doesn't have. He's taking a stab at it, and he was chasing a heart flush, and I got it. So now I'm up over 300,000 chips. Things are going well. Under the gun +1, I get ace 2 off. I do a min raise, folds all the way to the big blind. And I'm going to be involved with a lot of hands with this guy. He does a min bet after the 3-2-6 flop. I raise. He calls. We both check the 3 on the turn. He bets the 10 on the river. I decide to call again, just in case he's taking a stab at it, and he was. So he had a gut draw and couldn't get there. So the next hand, I'm in the big blind. Same player again, does a min raise, so I decide to come along. 2 spades on the flop and a pair of 7s, so when he bets, I check raise, he calls. I hit the flush on the turn. I lead out this time, he calls again. 8 of clubs comes again, I lead out again, and he folds. So now I'm up over 400,000 chips. So this next hand, I avoid losing some chips, losing more chips than I could have. So I've got pocket 4s. I decided we're just going to limp along. Same player to my right limps. So the big blind raises to 36, or small blind raises 36,000. I call. I like the 366 flop. Jack of diamonds comes. He checks. I decide to check. Another diamond comes on the river. He checks and I check again, even though I'm thinking I've got some showdown value. And he turns over king queen. So he was trying to induce me to bet. So I lost some chips there, but probably could have lost more had he bet on the turn. Next hand, I've got 10-3 in the small blind, and this is one of those hands where I didn't go for the bounty because there are two players involved in the pot. If the second player hadn't jumped in, I probably would have called with my 10-3, thinking I could have been isolated. I'm glad he did jump in because it saved me 76,000 or so chips. So here's an example of where I do go for a bounty, or a blind, or a bounty. Same player does a min raise, I call. And the small blind shoves all in. Granite Docs, who's been just playing every hand, raises, so I shove him. And we both turn over king queen. So we can't catch up to the ace, and we just get our chips back. But we both donate about 70,000 chips or so to each range. Now again, Granite Doc, he's been playing, he's been losing. I get pocket aces on the button, dream scenario, he min raises again. I just decide to go along this time. I'm trying to induce some action. When the flop comes 9-4-7, I'm deciding I'm shoving. Big blind, small blind gets out of the way, but good old Granite Doc calls, and he's got a 7. I was hoping he had a piece of the flop. He did, and I get his bounty, and his bounty was worth $8.50. So the next hand, I get Jack 10 in the middle position. Under the gun does a min raise. I decide to come along. I've got a big stack now, so I can play around. Flop is do 8-2. We both check. When the turn comes at Jack, I'm feeling good about myself, so I bet half pot. He calls. And then the river puts another spade on the board. When he checks, I decide to take my showdown value just to make sure I'm not getting trapped. And he had ace king. I get a good size pot, and that puts me up over 600,000 now. So my stack is steadily rising. I get pocket queens in an early position. I do a min raise. Small blind calls and the big blind calls. Now this is what happens. You get ace 4 deuce, so I decide to check. I want to see if they'll check twice. When the board pairs in the 4, they both check again, so I'm thinking neither has an ace. So I do a half pot bet and they both get out of the way. And now I am almost to 600,000, and it's time for the next bounty. So I'm on the button with ace king, got over 660,000 chips. I get a raise, a call, I shove, and then the caller calls my shove. He's got pocket fives. I've got ace king, 2 diamonds. Flop a turn, a flush, draw, and river the king to get the next bounty. So sometimes you got to get lucky. Won the flip, and I'm over $1 million in chips. So a few hands later, I got king 9 suited, middle position. I call the min raise. Big blind call, so we go 3-way to the flop. I flop top pair on a 9-7-7 board. And when these big blind shoves, I just don't hesitate to call. He's playing a flush draw, and ironically, he hits 8 and a 3 on the run out, but that doesn't help him. My 2 pair are bigger than his 3 pair, and I get another bounty. Now this next hand is the beginning of the end. I've already lost some chips. I've got ace 8 in the small blind. Player shoves. This was a very loose call. He's got ace 10. I'm dominated. He turns the flush, and I've lost more than half my stack. When you get to this point in the tournament, you just got to start looking for spots to shove and hope somebody will call you light, going after your bounty. I get queen 3 suited. It folds to me. I decide this is a good chance to try to at least scoop the blinds while I've still got some fold equity maybe. I shove. It almost gets through, but the big blind calls. He's got ace jack. We're both playing spades, and then I turn or flop a 3. Avoid the disaster on the river. He could have a queen, would have given him a straight, and I get a much needed double up. But unfortunately, I didn't make it last much longer after that. So another good run. I I collected 4 bounties for $14.50, including an $8.50 bounty, and $15.05 in prize winnings for about $29.55 total, and a profit of around $22 or so. You can see the numbers on the screen there. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again soon.